Selecting a GPU instance in AWS is a project in itself. If you ever tried to create a GPU based instance in AWS for your artificial intelligence workload, you know what I'm talking about. There are a lot of options to choose from. You can launch your GPU instances with different GPU memory sizes or with different GPU generations. You can have different capabilities, different number of GPUs per instances, different CPUs, and then the list goes on. If you try to go to AWS console and then see that, okay, how many GPU instances are available, then you will come across lots of GPU families like P4D, P3, G5, P3, G4, and also there are a lot of others too. In this video, I'm going to just clear up some of the uh, mist, and I will try to show you some of the instances which I routinely do on the basis of use case. After watching this video, I am hopeful that you'll be able to simply go into the AWS console and select the GPU instance of your choice. Now, before I delve into each of these instances which are shown on your screen, let me say this that just by selecting a GPU instance is not enough. You also need to make sure that you um, also select the instance family. What I mean is that just by select going with the number of GPUs is not the right idea. You need to go with the instance types when it comes to AWS. Now, the first one which you can see on your screen is P4D.24x large. Only select this instance if you want to run a huge large language model in your production environment with lots and lots of users. It is one of the top performant GPU instance in AWS. It has 8 NVIDIA A100 GPUs with 40 GB memory each GPU. So it's a very, very high profile instance, and you should only be using it if you want to train any large language model, the base model, with fine tuning with a huge data set. And as I mentioned, this is based on a lot of GPUs, and the architecture is Ampere, and it also includes third generation NVLink for fast multi GPU training. Okay, now the second instance I would like to recommend on the basis of a use case is this P3.2x large. If you want a good performant or high performant GPU instance, but only with single GPU just to save cost, and you don't want to run it in a production environment, or maybe your production environment is very small, then go with P3.2x large. This will not only give you good performance, but at the same time, you won't be selling your kidney to pay for it. So this is a use case for it. Third option is G5X large. Now, this G family is quite good when it comes to high performance as well as lower cost, because G instances are cheaper than the P instances. So if your use case is that you just want to have have a small language model, a relatively small language model, of course, with a relatively smaller data set, then go with G5X large, and your production environment or your pre-prod environment can sustain that smaller workload. This instance has only one NVIDIA A10G GPU with 24 GB of CPU memory, and it is also based on the latest Ampere architecture. This is the A10G NVIDIA card is a low is also from the family of A100, which we saw in the P4 instances, but or in the P family, of course. But the G family A10 one is still good enough, but not as powerful as the A100 or P3 instance family. So the main difference between P and G family is the NVIDIA card type. The G family has this A10G, whereas the P family has this NVIDIA A100. Okay. Now, next comes again a P3 instance with two sizes, 8x large and 16x large. Now in this one again, as you can see, we have multi GPUs, but mainly P3 instances with simple X large are used for development of large language models. So consider this: if you have a huge data set and you want to just develop your um, large language model instead of putting it in production, then go with P3X large. It has four NVIDIA V100 GPUs, and also the four ones are for 8x large, and 8 into NVIDIA V100 GPUs are for 16x large. This is more towards smaller models, data sets, and faster performance when it comes to developing these models. But similarly, if you want to deploy this in production and your large language model is really, really data intensive, then go with the P4 family instead of P3. Okay. Then my favorite one is G4DN X large. Normally, whenever I need to use or test or just play around with the large language models, then I simply select G4DN X large. This has a lower performance than other options, but the cost is far more less. I think for 1 hour, if I'm running a Jupyter notebook on this G4DNX large for 1 hour, it is under $1 US dollar per hour, which is quite cost effective. And I have been using it for some model training and also some model inference deployment. In this one, you get one NVIDIA T4 GPU with 16 GPU of GPU of GPU memory. It is based on the previous generation of Turing architecture. So it's not Ampere one, it's a Turing architecture, but still very good enough. And so if you just want to have um, say higher system memory and you just want to do some pre-processing, post-processing, but just play around with your models, then G4 family is good enough. And then in this example, I'm showing you G4DN, which is my default. But if you have slightly higher requirement of memory or cards, then you can increase the size, like you can go with a 2x large. You can also use 2, 4, 8, and 16x large in this one. So the more higher you will go, the more you will pay. So this is it. There are a lot of other options too, but I believe that these five options are good enough for 90% of the use cases if you want to use GPU based instances in AWS. Thanks for listening.